One moment, please. Hello and welcome. Sorry about that, everyone. My battery pack croaked. I had to grab the other battery pack. I was sitting here getting ready to start, and my battery pack just went kaput. And I had to run and grab another battery pack. So I hope everyone is doing well. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Tuesday evening. And I am your technically cursed host, Bill Sylvie, aka the Dungeon Delver, coming at you. And if you haven't already, if YouTube has just sent you here, please click the subscribe button. Click the bell icon for notifications. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and tell us what you like about the live stream, and we'll do more of it. And of course, when I say we, I'm not just talking about me and a mouse in my pocket, but of course also my co-host, Kyle Schuant, who will be joining us shortly. He is currently out in the green room. I think he's finishing off the last of the Danish, which I told you I wanted that, Kyle. We have no specific agenda tonight. We are going to answer your RPG questions. We're going to talk about whatever comes to mind. Slycanthrope, hello. It's nice. It's nice to see you come in an individual serving rather than just available with the 3-pack of Eric and Heidi and yourself. I hope you're having a wonderful evening. Clemente Clyde, targeting device on screen. Yeah, it's off now. It's off now. No drone strike. So I am going to just don me now my awesome headphones, and we're going to welcome a guy who, quite frankly, makes Wednesday night wonderful times because he's a good friend of mine, and he's an awesome dude, and he deserves your attention and your applause and your general respect. Everybody say hello to a man that I'm not exactly sure if he owns one, but he bears the moniker of the Viking-Hat GM. Kyle, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Bill. I like the targeting ridicule. That was good. It made me feel like I was playing Mech Warrior.
A little I always say this, and I guess if you didn't listen to Eurobeat or Industrial or EBM back in the 90s, it might just fly past you, but I call that the Front 242 vision. But of course, Kyle and I think, are on the same page that everything was better in the 90s.
No, everything was better in the 80s.
Well, Front 242 started in the 80s, so we can claim them in that in that context as well. But anyway, how the heck are you, Kyle? How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, all right. It's a bit chilly, but I just went for a walk. That warmed me up.
That's good. I went for a walk too. The sun is down. It's been down for about an hour and a half. The feels like temperature outside is still 100 plus degrees, and at midnight tonight it will still be 100 plus degrees. Which, that's the thing. Do the weathermen down in Australia put you through the nonsense of the feels like temperature?
Sometimes, but only when it's like the extremes, or at least the extremes for Melbourne. So here we get to. In the worst of winter is a few degrees above freezing. So you add a bit of wind to that, and it becomes a few degrees below freezing in terms of what it feels like. But otherwise, right. They don't mention it. And similar with summer, it gets up to your like 100 degree Fahrenheit or 110 or something like that. You add some humidity to that, and it gets and it feels like more. But to me, the one I always want to hear is the nighttime temperature when it's summer, because when it doesn't drop below what would you guys call it? I don't know, but anyway, 20 degrees centigrade or something like that overnight,
right.
It's so hard to sleep. You know, you need that right. You need to be a little bit cool to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, we're Central Air, and God bless our poor air handler, but it was struggling so hard last night. I don't know that it hit 72 in the house, which I guess that's probably about what that's 15, 17, something like that. But yeah, no, I walked Zeus just before the show started, and my God, dude, you get a heat stroke in the dark. If you went out, if you had headlights on your lawnmower and were like, I'm going to wait till the sun goes down to cut my lawn because I'm SMRT smart. If you went out and did heavy yard work right now, you would drop dead from the heat.
I always wondered, that dog of yours is so deep velvet black. Do you ever like scare the shit out of people when you're walking them at night? And they just see the eyes appear out of the darkness.
I have inadvertently crept up on a few people, and what I didn't realize this, but his collar and his rope, although his rope is so dirty now, you can't really tell, but his collar at least is highly photo reflective if you hit it with LED lights. I mean, it's insane. It glows like a damn lightsaber effect. And yeah, I've inadvertently walked up on people and given him a sudden case of the heebie-jeebies. But he's going gray like Daddy, so I imagine it'll be a little bit easier.
I didn't know dogs went gray.
Yeah.
I thought they just lost their hair like old teddy bears or something.
No, he's getting salt and pepper on his muzzle and on his chin. It's funny. Some labs will get almost this vitiligo like effect, and around their eyes and down their nose will go completely white. Which, if they're already yellow white, it's fine. But if they're chocolate or if they're black, it's weird because it looks like they've got clown makeup on. But no, I have startled a few people inadvertently walking them at night, but we get a lot of the folksy weather guys are like, you know, well, it's 91 today in Longwood, but the feels like temperature is 102. Bitch, if it feels like 102, it is 102. That's what 102, or I guess 33, 34 is. Feels like. It feels like it's. Is that like it identifies as?
They should just report the temperature as, you know, like hot, damn hot, stay inside and sleep, or something like that.
Yeah.
Seek cover lest you burst into flames.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean,
they should just report it like that. We don't really need to know that it's 28 centigrade versus 26 centigrade or whatever. We just need to know, like, because like 26, 28 centigrade, when it's sunny, that could be nice, but you probably want a hat or sunscreen if you're at the paler side of the human race. But 26, 28 centigrade, when it's overcast, it's just oppressively awful, you know. So we just need to know what it's going to feel like. We don't really need to know the exact numbers. We're not. We're not doing scientific experiments. You know, it was the. I always remember that high school and uni chemistry and stuff was, you know, the properties of some particular chemical compound at standard atmospheric temperature and pressure, and yeah, we're not doing experiments all the time. We don't have to account for that. So just tell us if it's going to be horrible out there or not.
That brings up something like my. I'm guessing down in Australia. I think this is an international standard. I could be wrong, but this may not be anything you've ever encountered. But do you know what an MSDS is for certain materials?
No idea.
It's basically it's a warning label that says all of the stuff that is in a given chemical. Like you buy house paint nowadays, and there's an MSDS on it, and it's something.
Yeah, we have an ingredients label here.
Yeah. Well, the MSDS. I was sitting in my dad's truck. We were getting ready to go do some work, and he had gone into a building supply place and brought some stuff out. And then they were going to he was going to go get the forklift guy to bring some stuff and load it onto the truck. And I look, and there's this heavy cardboard cylinder. It's like a paper towel roll, but it's like a half an inch thick, and it's got plastic caps on the end. And I look over and I notice that there's actually a radioactivity symbol on this that my dad has set next to me in the truck. And I look over and I clean my glasses to make sure I'm not mistaken. And I kind of heft this thing up. And that was my first encounter with the MSDS. So these were welding rods. And apparently there's a set amount of cadmium in them, which if you pass a certain amount of voltage through will... I found this out years later because I asked my dad about it. I was like, "Dad, are these radioactive?" And he just kind of shrugged and said, "Not so much, you'd know." And we went on about our business, but yeah. So those particular welding rods had cadmium in them, and if you electrify it, then they become a different isotope of cadmium that, according to some laboratory study done by the federal government, is actually technically radioactive. So they had to make a big deal about, hey, if you're using these,
don't eat them.
Yeah, don't eat them. Exactly. Don't eat the welding rods, which, as my wife says, the only reason that they put warning labels like that on stuff is because somebody has done it.
Yes.
Or attempted to do it.
Yes. We got a veteran here in the gym, and he just says, like, every stupid rule in the army was there because there was one stupid bastard at one time.
Yeah. I mean, the one of the most horrifically effective devices is the Claymore mine. And for those of you who don't know, it's a license plate sized metal box that is concave or convex, depending on which side of it you're on. And you place it, rather than putting it under the ground, you place it so it's facing forward. It's got a very long wire and a switch on it, and you see the bad guys coming in and press the button, and it goes kaboom. Well, inside is a sheet of C4, plastic explosive, and I'm going to get completely demonetized. But there's steel pellets pressed into it, and then it goes kaboom at the bad guys, hopefully. And on all of them, and if you don't believe me, you can Google the image. On all of the U.S. Army ones is stamped, front towards enemy, do not eat.
I don't remember the do not eat, but I do remember front towards enemy.
Some GI somewhere pried the damn thing open and said, I wonder if that's good to eat.
Well, the story goes, I don't know if it's true, the story goes is that during the Vietnam War, they used to pull the plastic explosives out to put in their cooker. In their cooker.
Yes.
To cook things.
I have heard this from multiple sources, so I can only imagine that it is either one of those things like, well, everybody knows. Did you do it? No, but I know a guy who told me about a guy who said he did it, or it was actually done. But the story goes, if you ball up a little bit of C4 and stick it in your cooker, it'll light and it'll burn nice and hot. The trick is you don't, like C4, you can punch a piece of C4 and it won't explode. You can burn a piece of C4 and it won't explode. But if it's on fire and you smack it hard, then it will blow up. So don't combine those actions. But yes, I have heard the same story. Go get some C4 and heat it up. So maybe that's where do not eat on Claymore mines came from. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was 10 years between regular and reserves, and I never carried or fired a live one. So it was, like hand grenades and things, and rifles, of course, machine guns, blah, 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 but not a Claymore mine. We were also taught about landmines. They just showed us a little dummy. I don't know if an explosives expert or a Demons guy would know about them, but it was probably, just looking around the gym and thinking, it was probably just about yay big. It was probably just about 4 inches across or something like that, relatively small, and they called it a toe popper. Supposedly would just blow toes off. They said it would actually blow off the leg below the knee, but I said that's more than your toes. But yeah, so they taught us about mines because Australia hadn't yet. It was only in this was back in the 90s, so it was only later that we acceded to that treaty banning landmines, which I think is a very good treaty. They're horrible things. And takes decades to clean up. The British were still cleaning them up off the Falklands Islands after the war there, like 30 years later or something like that. And that war only lasted a couple of months. But yeah, they showed us them. There was a corporal standing up there showing us them, and he sort of said, you click this thing to arm it and then stick it in there and cover it up, and then you have a field of them, and then you mark the mines and everything. They told us about them, but I never touched one. His one was obviously just a dummy. We were out in the bush somewhere. But yeah, nothing like whether it be a land mine or a remote detonated mine, and never carried a live one or fired one. So I assume they work.
Vaughn Gifford asked, speaking of mines, we actually do talk about tabletop role-playing game stuff on this channel for those of you who might be interested in that. But Vaughn asked, have I ever played Recon? I have not. Now that's an early Palladium games. That's from like prior to Kevin getting his hands on the Robotech license for like 35 or 40 years, or however long he had it. But no, I have not played Recon. How about you, Kyle? Did you ever play Recon?
Yes, I did.
Tell us about it.
Recon campaigns. Well, it's at least the way that the DM ran it was basically a percentile system. There was, as I remember it, like you were given skills. So you had what was it? Strength and intelligence, and maybe there was stamina. I think strength, intelligence, and stamina. And you you create a character. Basically, you're meant to be long range reconnaissance patrols, that sort of thing. And you'd create a character, and the demolitions guy would have demolition skill, the machine gunner would have machine gunner skill, and so on. And you have like 5 or 6 skills, but the rules didn't actually, from memory, the rules didn't state like how the skills were rated or generated or anything. So Tony just said, you just roll for them. Some people are just naturally good shots or whatever, so you just roll for what your starting skill is. And then he let you, when you use sort of RuneQuest style, when you used it in an adventure, he'd let you go up. Mm-hmm. The strength was your hit points. And when you got wounded, you lost strength. Strength was also how many kilograms you could carry. So if you had a strength 50 guy, he could carry around 50 kilograms. But then he got wounded, somebody stabbed him for 10 hit points of damage. He could now only carry 40. So he could either, and that was also your movement. So the strength 50 guy could move faster than the strength 40 guy. So if he got wounded for 10 hit points, he slowed down. But he'd also have to drop something. If he continued trying to carry 50 kilograms, he just couldn't move. So he'd have to drop 10 kilograms worth of gear, which meant that in long firefights, you ended up crawling along the ground with just a pistol in your hands. You're like, oh, yeah, okay, this is 1 kilogram. I can hold it still and fire.
Well,
yeah.
I was just going to say, it makes me wonder if Kevin maybe borrowed from Traveler with a stat degradation system. As injuries pile up, stats go down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a game from back in the 80s. I think there was a lot of, as well as the outright copying, there was a lot of convergent evolution going on. The same as, like we've joked about, crabs have been reinvented by nature about 12 times in whole different species, because and the different types of tree birds and everything, birds that eat bugs and worms in the soil. There's a little evolutionary niche. Here is food, so something evolves to eat that food rather than eating the food that there's already a dozen species competing for. They evolve to eat that little worm in the ground that nobody else touches. So I think similarly with role-playing games, you're trying to get a certain effect, and so you come up with similar ideas to others. Vaughan says, had a MOS too, military occupation specialty. That was it, and that basically dictated what skills you would get in recon. You could play it however you wanted. They fictionalized it. They just called it NAM and the States. It was fictionalized versions of the real thing. You had an alignment system, but it was one of the wacky Palladium kind of alignment systems. Can't remember them all. It was things like principled. There's your idealistic guy, like, no, this is the way you must do things. And then there was opportunistic, where you didn't really have any principles, but you weren't trying to harm anyone, but you weren't trying to help anyone either. You would just take opportunities to advance yourself. Chaotic neutral, maybe. But
Yeah.
So it had that alignment system. It didn't have a system for, like, nothing happened if you went against your alignment. What else was it? Yeah, and you could, like most games, you could play it super serious down the line, or you could play it lighthearted and stupid. Our DM was fairly easygoing, and most of the players seemed to want lighthearted and stupid. We had one player who went through 17 characters in one game session.
He was the platoon.
Because Tony was really good at, like, okay, let's bring the player back in as soon as possible. Reinforcement to the platoon arrives in the middle of a firefight.
He's on the next Huey that comes in.
Yeah, and so, they drop an ammo box of 7.62, and they drop Nacho as well, because he what was his name, Baden. He had, his characters were always Mexican grenadiers. And so the Nacho family was like, forget about like Mrs. Ryan and her 4 sons or whatever it was. The Nacho family lost dozens. One night, I can't remember what he called them all, but it was, it was Jose Nacho, and then Jesus Nacho.
How did your platoon take Hill 214? Human wave attacks, sir. Also, I'm going to need 1 gross silver stars, posthumous if matters.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, so what Tony as DM said was, I'll never forget it, and I've quoted it in Conflict, I think, and in talking about that. There's only 3 kinds of combats, really. 1, you ambush them. 2, they ambush you. 3, stand-up fight. When you ambush them, all of them die, pretty much. And all of you live, probably unwounded. When they ambush you, all of you die, pretty much. And almost all, and they all live, except maybe 1 or 2 lightly wounded. A stand-up fight, everyone dies. And her simple rule was, if you can get up and see them in the middle of the firefight, they can see you. So what would happen is that our platoon would be, or section or whatever, would be going along, patrolling through some rice paddy or something, and shots ring out. Contact front. So we all go to ground and hide behind a little earthen berm. And then Baden, when it gets his character, I get up and charge at the enemy, firing my 40 mil grenade. So it'd be this 30 VC who all fire at Baden's character. So, down he went. All right, rolls up another character. But he seemed to be convinced that he would eventually find glory. Like the guy who just walks up to a bunch of women and asks them, do you want to get it on? And he figures that if he asks 100, that 1 will say yes, even though he'll get 99 slaps and 10 boyfriends who are bigger than him and beat him up. He'll get one good night. if he keeps trying. I think that was Baden's thinking with his character. If I just have 100 Mexican grenadiers charged, one of them is going to survive and get a Medal of Honor.
That's the Soviet or Chinese method, but Baden approved, so I guess it worked. One of the it's funny you mentioned the stand-up fight where everybody dies, and I'm immediately drawn to a scene. This is well documented. Yes, I first saw it in Band of Brothers, but it is absolutely documented. When they were approaching the village of Carentan, Easy Company was moving double time on a road, and their point man was taken out by a burst of machine gun fire. And the company scattered and split both sections left and right of the road to Carentan. And of course, Richard Winters, realizes that the entire lane leading into Carentan has been pre-sighted, and that the Germans are going to start dropping mortars and light artillery on them, and they've already got them zeroed on machine guns. So he's standing in the middle of the road, running back and forth to these groups of men that have dropped down, yelling at them to get up and run forward, just get up and charge forward, not to be undercover. And he's like kicking them and cussing at them, and they were all astounded, and they got up and they did it, and they carried the day at Carentan. Of course, there were wounded, there were casualties, and so on. But I recall reading completely outside of the Band of Brothers thing. I was shocked when I realized that what I was reading was a German soldier's account of the defense of Carentan. I mean, he said it was Carentan later on. I was like, but he saw that from his position. He saw Winters standing in the middle of the road with gunfire flying all around him, yelling at his men, kicking his men, cursing at his men, pulling on his men to get them up. And he said, from my perspective, that's when I knew the war was lost. How could we stand up against men like that? So it was kind of interesting. And that's one of those things that's kind of next to impossible to model in an RPG. Well, he's just standing there. Well, I opened fire on him. Okay, well, the dice say you're gonna hit him. I mean, it's gonna happen. But we have a question from the audience, and we're here to answer your questions. And Vaughn says, do I know any good military style games? Now, I will tell you two military style games. One I love because it is what is the convergence, Kyle? It's retro stupid. Twilight 2000 I love because Twilight 2000, it's my set is over here. I love Twilight 2000 because Twilight 2000 is, in its construction, it is lawful serious in terms of tone. It is retro stupid in terms of character generation and the funky stuff that can play. But if you don't want to go track down a nearly 40-year-old tabletop role-playing game that has rules that would give Heisenberg a headache, I heartily recommend Conflict. This is, I also lost my bookmark. I heartily recommend a copy of Conflict for many reasons. It is lightweight. If you can grok Traveler, you can grok Conflict. It fits in your
Bill's account. So
yes,
the print version, which always recommend print over PDF.
And it fits right in your cargo shorts pocket. So you have no excuse not to carry. You have no excuse not to carry a copy of Conflict and 2D6 with you to any and all gaming events. So when the DM calls you and says he's got the coof,
that's
or
all the charts of the book in the middle 2 pages.
Yes,
that's all of them.
And we have done character generation. We have run scenarios. We have had a lot of fun on the show playing Conflict on Wednesday nights before. I wouldn't hate it if you ran some Conflict for us on stream again, Kyle. I'm just saying.
Like, as long as we get players, I'd like it.
Okay. I actually have two copies. One of these is revised.
You want to come and play Conflict?
Vaughn, there you go. There's your the conflict signal is up. If you want to play some Conflict on stream,
You don't even need a copy of the book to play. It's too simple. So, but it helps. But you don't have to. It gives you the idea. Yep. So the base of the system is you have a few stats. You have probably just 3 or 4 skills of different levels of ability. Roll 2d6, add your skill to do things. Get 10 plus, you succeed. Rolling to hit in combat tends to be hard to hit things, but when you do hit things, they tend to go down. The system, I based the wounding system on real-world statistics from warfare. And there's also a system of, it's kind of like morale. So both the wounding and the morale ideas came about through this guy who wrote under a pseudonym, Charles Franklin, on this Christian Gamers blog at all places. When I did the game, I sent the information to the blog author to see if the article author, because there's a bunch of different articles from different authors there, if the article author was interested in having a conversation, but he's like, no, he prefers his anonymity. Charles Franklin's his pseudonym, so who knows who the guy is really. Yeah, it was a couple of good articles. He had one, Hitting Them Where It Hurts, where he talked about the wounding, and he had another one, Keeping Their Heads Down. And he looked at the real world effects of how in combats people will freeze or they'll just repeat their previous actions. That's realistic, not simply in combats, but in any kind of high stress situation like a car accident or some kind of first aid situation. Some people freeze, some people keep repeating a previous action even when it's not doing anything. But I looked at that and I went, yeah, players are going to get frustrated with that if they have to roll to act every round. There's a couple of games where that happens, but players will get frustrated with that. So I did it a little bit differently. It had a stat called readiness, and readiness is how many combat actions you get in a round. Anyone can ambush somebody, but then once people start fighting back, or if the person themselves gets ambushed, what do they get to do each round? And it's rated 0 to 3. So that's what you see characteristic of very well trained people. They just get more shit done in a round than lesser trained people. They just move really, really quickly because they've trained and they've trained and they've trained and they've trained. Like, I heard that the guys who raided Osama bin Laden's compound, they'd mapped it out previously and they built a mock-up of it, and they just did raid upon raid on it, practicing back home. They didn't just go in blind, but they raided. So they just moved more rapidly than all the guys in there. So yeah, there's readiness, acting as a morale mechanic, if you like, and there's wounding mechanics. So what you get is, if you just pull a Baden and charge in, you'll die very quickly. If you work as a team, you'll really dominate the enemy. The group with better teamwork is going to win out, even if that group doesn't have really great equipment or really great positioning. Whatever, the group with the better teamwork is going to win out if they do the classic fire and move. One group stops and fires while the other one moves ahead. Because when you stop and fire at them, it drops the enemy's readiness all by 1. So it drops the number of actions that they can take. So even your special forces, readiness plus 3 guys, they'll lose one of the action and go to just 2, because somebody's firing automatic weapons at them. So it makes them keep their heads down a bit. So yeah, I tried to make it more or less realistic. It is fairly lethal, and that's why one of the suggested campaign types is training. That it suggests that the game master take people through a few example scenarios, as if they're training in a kill house or something like that, and only then take them out into the field, so to speak, so they know what to expect.
Right on. Uncle Brat wants in. Uncle Brat says, sign me up for the game. So I starred that, Uncle Brat. I've got that information here. I'll reach out to you. Definitely. Thank you very much. I wasn't having a stroke, by the way, when I kept leaning over this way. I found, first of all, I'm going to leave the link up to Conflict. So you can... you guys can go get yourself a print copy of Conflict. But I do, I have this, and what this has to do with the price of tea in China, here. This is actually, it is a Palladium system game. Now, Kevin is one of those guys who believes he has the best flavor of soda of all of the sodas, and it doesn't matter whether it's RC Cola or Diet Dr. Pepper or Jones, Blueberry, whatever. Everybody thinks they've got the best. And Kevin applied his Palladium system to all of his role-playing games. So we were talking, but the only reason I get this one is not to talk about big stompy robots, is this wonky ass alignment system that he invented. And it covers a couple of pages. So we have alignments: good, principled and scrupulous; selfish, unprincipled and anarchist; evil, miscreant, aberrant, and diabolic. So you can have a broad category, like you have lawful good, lawful neutral, lawful evil. So under good, principled and scrupulous, we have let's see, principled characters are generally the strong moral characters. Rick Hunter and Lisa Hayes are principled of a principled alignment, which if you know Macross, you'll know who that is. If you don't, just go with it. With a highest regard for others' lives and well-being, truth and honor. And then there's 11 things that principled characters will always do. I'm not deep diving this, Kyle. Trust me. Principled characters will always keep their word, avoid lies, never kill or attack an unarmed foe. Is there a better time? Anyway, never harm an innocent, never torture for any reason, never kill for pleasure, always help others, work well with the group, respect authority, self-discipline, and honor. Never betray a friend. Never break the law unless conditions are desperate. This means no breaking and entry, theft, torture, unprovoked assaults, etc. So that's kind of the alignment system, and it started back with the mechanoids and with Recon, because just like Mark Miller and Traveler saying, well, I need 3 books. I need 3 books and they need to be about this long. Kevin took a different lesson from Dungeons and Dragons and said, I need 9 alignments also. So that's just a little taste of the alignment system of play. But I tell you what, you guys let me know if you would like a deep dive of Robotech, Palladium system Robotech, and we can do that one of these days. That, of course, assumes that Kevin Simbeta doesn't decide that me talking about his game on YouTube and potentially getting monetization and supers from you guys is stealing from him and sues me. You think I'm kidding? You think I'm kidding?
I'm still even remembering back in the late 90s when people were putting up all their Yahoo GeoCities fan pages about various role-playing games, and every role-playing game in the world, company in the world, was suing them.
Yeah, it was predominantly
the D20. We make D20s. Screw you.
Yeah, It was predominantly Kevin, and it was predominantly TSR. He tried to copy everything TSR did, including being incredibly litigious and then being dickish about being incredibly litigious.
Well, last I checked, SJ Games did it too. Like, they've got a GURPS fan page policy. You can only mention GURPS on your page or have a GURPS fan page if you comply with X and Y and have the disclaimer in. Just in case you want to put up GURPS rules for something morally reprehensible in their eyes, or with profanity or something like that.
Of all companies,
no, you can't do that.
of all companies, though, Steve Jackson Games. I mean, this is a company. They were raided by the Secret Service for their card game Hacker. They were, that they had in it was republished in Murphy's Rules, which we have done a deep dive of on the show, but they had a Murphy's Rules column. It wasn't very long, but it was worth a few chuckles about what TSR stood for, and literally the first one was they sue regularly. So it kind of breaks my heart that the kind of hippy dippy Steve Jackson Games would be out there suing people. That's a shame. That's a shame.
Well, money.
Yeah. Yeah, you too can make tens of dollars by suing people over IP theft. And the whole thing is, look, I get if you're up on Mount Hasbro, or you're in the Fortress Island of Games Workshopville, you can literally, like, all the money I've ever made in my life and all the money I'm ever going to make in my life would not entail in its entirety a day's worth of salary for the legal team at Hasbro Wizards of the Coast or at Games Workshop. Okay. And when you have that kind of disposable money, you can do things like destroy the hopes and dreams of adolescents who just wanted to say nice things about your games. But yeah, I mean, there's an old saying, and maybe you've heard this, Kyle. Maybe you guys out in the audience have heard this. The fight is the fighting is so ugly because the stakes are so small.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why in Victoria, like, we've got the two major parties. Well, it's three really, because one's a coalition or whatever, and they've got factions in their parties. Okay, but it's still one party. They've got, like, the major party, the ALP, Australian Labor Party, has got probably about 70 members of parliament altogether, 70, 80 members of parliament in the States House. And they managed to stay more or less united. They have their arguments behind closed doors, whatever. But then there's the Victorian Socialists, who have no members of parliament, and they've split into three parties. So, they get a steady 1 to 1.5% of the vote, but they're still split into three parties.
I know it's not what you meant, but when you say Victorian Socialists, it just conjures up
That may as well be for all their political relevance.
Right. You're talking about from Victoria, but pip pip, old boy, raise the black flag, slit a few throats, power to the workers. Yes. Radio.
Oh, sorry, I'll lean in towards my mic. I got tired of wearing the big earphones, so my mic.
Yeah, I can. The thing is this, and I've had a lot of people say, I am not like bouncing complaints back at you guys. I seriously wish that there was a Delver's Dungeon media empire, and I could send Kyle like monthly payments for 300 megabit up, and a sound engineer to come and block out a studio room for him and everything like that. But we're relying on what he has and what I have and what we can do with StreamYard, which sometimes, like some of Kyle's earliest appearances on the show before even I was using StreamYard are unlistenable. And I don't mean the sound is bad. I mean, you just can't hear it. And I had that happen to older shows. So guys, from the bottom of my heart, I'm not just watching your messages fly by and going, and then ignoring what you're saying. If I could just have a universal platform and everybody that's on the show has a condenser mic and a DAC converter and a tube amp and everything else. I don't
even know what he's talking about. It's like,
yeah, I know. I've gone off and started speaking Chinese. So I
would need the technical guy to come and do it. So because I've
no
idea.
Yeah,
he's speaking Mandarin.
Right. So I have to ask a question of our viewers, though. I gotta ask this. We'll put that back up there soon. Cernunos, who, by the way, I love your name. You said something about because you had dropped some comments on the video, so I'm putting you on the spot. Usually it's me and Kyle, or me and my guests, or just me on the spot. What is Larian? I've seen that pop up in video comments. Yeah, well, that's the word on the street is Larian, and I'm like, what? What is that? So you're gonna have to fill me in, and I'm not giving you crap about it. I literally don't know what this Larian thing that you've referred to is. So you'll have to tell me. You'll have to tell me. Yeah, I wish I could. I've gone into the settings and Larian, the company that made Baldur's Gate 3. Oh, right. Okay, yeah. We're just going to leave that alone because there is demonetizationable stuff in the discussions about Baldur's Gate 3. Suffice to say, I know what's going on. Wow. TTRPG, Baldur's Gate 3 is based on 5th edition D&D. But anyway, yeah, that's so to move on to other topics. I don't think you and I have ever had that discussion. Kyle, when you were getting your first gaming years on, did you do any giant robot stuff? Any Stompa-Meki?
No, I wasn't really aware of any of that until my 20s. I might have played like half a dozen sessions. I don't really remember what we did. I did play a fair bit of the computer game.
Right.
I remember being proud of my mech design, who had nothing but machine guns on him. Lots of armor and nothing but machine guns as weapons, and so he literally couldn't overheat.
More DACA, all the DACA.
So I called him the Rambo variant because he had to get really close to other mechs, and then just be and just be like these little bits of armor flaking off them really, really slowly, and it was just a matter of the reaction speed of the enemy. If they reacted quickly enough, they'd blow me to smithereens with whatever weapon they had, which was invariably more powerful than the machine guns. But if they didn't react quickly enough, or if I could just keep moving around them as they were trying to turn around or something, it's just.
I just want to address this real quick. Vaughn asks, Baldur's Gate 3 can't be when I get a chance, if I get a chance to actually play Baldur's Gate 3, I can and will certainly discuss elements of the plot. That was more tongue-in-cheek because Baldur's Gate 3 has intimate human contact of the horizontal mambo type, and also some similar contact, not between humans and demi-humans. And that, going any further down that street, is where we get into the demonetization part, Vaughn. But no, I mean, if I had played it, I could provide some thought and input into plot and story and so on. But that's all I really want to get into with regard to it. One of the bug fixes I saw was funny, and it is, again, it's a demonetization thing, but they actually mentioned the certain body parts clipping through clothing had been fixed. I'm like, my God.
Oh, God.
This wasn't a problem in Doom. We didn't have this problem in Wizardry. Hey, we didn't even have it in Fallout 4, and you could mod that thing to hell and gone, if you know what I'm talking about.
God. Oh, why though?
But yeah,
that's not what I game for.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I mean, there's a lot to be said, regardless of your medium, regardless of your format, for fade to black. Yeah. You know. And I've mentioned this before. I put on the D&D horror story stuff. I just think is hilarious because all of them can be solved with kick that person out or leave that group. That's literally it. And the guys who are like, so after 9 sessions, it became clear that my dungeon master was not going to stop creeping on me. 9 sessions? You've literally put a quarter of a year into this cat piss man doing the drow stripper ninja lesbian thing to you. Why have you not left? Why have you not moved on? No D&D is better than bad D&D, but
zero tolerance for nonsense. Yeah.
I listen to these things. I listen to them, and I'm just like, you know, just you know, when your game master says, okay, so you have the elven princess all by yourself in your castle, and she at that point you've just got to be like, I need to go. I just noticed I have to get my watch from the watch repair place. I got to do this. So I'll see you. And you get up and you leave. I mean, as we've said before, whatever you and your table are comfortable with is what you and your table are comfortable with. But there's a point when you gotta, you gotta reach down between and pull that ejection handle and just punch right out of there. You know, I think if comic shops offered chairs that had ejection handles in them that would parachute you, safely to the front of the store where you could pay for your dice and your minis and your paints and then leave after a situation like that, the world would be a better place.
You want the ejection seat where the other guy gets ejected, like in those,
just
movies. Just press this button and bye.
Like I've mentioned this before. I found this out through reading. I'm not like some super secret expert. I've read about this. I've seen talks given by people who worked in the industry of launching missiles out of silos. And the way the key turns work is that's actually called a vote, at least here in the US, is if 2 of 5 silos in a wing or a flight or whatever it is, a squadron, rotate their keys, then the missile, then basically that means that 4 of 20, 4 of 10 have voted, and things proceed accordingly. So you can't just have like one missile crew go, you know what I want to do today, Kyle? I want to nuke Korea. Let's go. you're like, sounds good, Bill. And we decide to do that.
But you also can't just have one pacifist who vetoes the rest.
Exactly. 10 guys, 9 of them are, 10 guys, and one of them's like, well, I'm not doing that.
So what would the government do if they wanted to launch just one nuke?
I mean, as far as I understand the permissive action link, I mean, the commander in chief would go through the JCS, he'd go through the war plans, and they might have to modify an existing mission.
Okay.
And
because I'm just picturing like Sean Connery as president, instead of saying one ping, just one ping,
one missile only,
one nuclear missile.
One nuclear missile only.
That will be enough.
That will be enough. So
Luxembourg.
Take that, you filthy Luxembourgers. But no, it's my understanding that in a case like that, I think that would literally be presidential authority. Like your phone rings, you pick it up, and it's literally like they validated through that's the president and he's giving your silo orders. I would think they'd have something like that in place. But the point of all this ridiculousness is that you should have in comic stores a similar voting system. 9 people and a DM at the table. The DM, takes out his lovingly painted drow stripper ninja lesbian and puts it on the table and says, she starts using her whip of disrobing on you all, and you don't get saving throws. Everybody should have a brass key. The one sensible player breaks open a card holder and says, I have a valid message. Gentlemen, insert your keys. Everybody puts their keys in. On my mark, rotate your keys. 3, 2, 1, mark. And that GM is just ejected.
When I get that custom gaming table made, that has the little drawers for everybody's character sheets and the drink holders and all the rest, I have to put the brass key in.
Yeah, absolutely. Little triangular switch with safe, open, launch. just if somebody starts misbehaving at the table, you just pull out a red 3x5 card, look at it, look at the person to your right and say, I have a valid authentication. And then they should start behaving right then.
People must have been unlucky because I haven't had too many experiences like that. I mean, when I was a teenager, of course, there was dumb stuff. Like we had a game master who had he had a dungeon master's screen, and on the outside of the screen were pictures that he'd taken from nudie magazines.
Oh, wonderful!
No, so nobody looked at the DM's notes because none of us got beyond.
Well, if you're an adolescent and your fellow players are adolescents, and
we're all like 15 or something, so you expect 15-year-olds to be stupid, but past that, it hasn't really happened. There's been annoying players. Like I said, there was that guy who who was arguing about orbital mechanics in Traveller.
Yeah.
But all that happened was that was the open game table where anyone could come and anyone could go. And after a few sessions, he went. He was, like I said, he wasn't an offensive person or whatever. It was just a little bit annoying and overall boring. Didn't contribute in huge amounts to the game session. You'll tolerate somebody's annoying habits if they contribute well in other ways, but most people know when they're not welcome and they drift off. And the other thing, of course, as I've commented to many newbie trainers about doing all this stuff, training people, love can be unreciprocated, but hate is usually mutual. if you dislike somebody, they probably dislike you. So they're not going to hang around. You don't have to have this formal sit down where you say, we've decided to let you go. We're doing a restructuring of the game group, and you don't need to. They'll just drink. Especially as you have an open game table where people can just come and go, and so nobody has to formally say, I won't be there next week or whatever. So.
Well, and I think also, I mean, so the horror stories, somebody pointed out that the horror stories that these guys read, and it's like, if you listen to one of the channels, there's like 5 or 6 people on YouTube, probably more, who read the RPG horror stories on Reddit. And they read them on YouTube. So just pick one whose presentation style you likes. You will hear all of the same horror stories from all of them. So apparently, like I've never spent an extensive time on Reddit. Like I used to post game summaries on the R AD&D group, and then I just stopped. But there's this, like, I don't know if it's some kind of cryptocurrency. I don't know if they have their own little monetization thing going on, and I don't know what it is. But like, I guess if enough people like a post on Reddit, they can get like a gold medal or a silver medal, or I don't know what goes on. So
there's a little award thing. So they've got Reddit coins, and you can use your coins to give an award to somebody, and then it displays a little gold thing. Or there's a mask one. The sharing is caring, or something like that. There's a little awards you can get across Reddit coins, and then you can pay for more Reddit coins through PayPal and give Reddit more money. If you feel that's a good thing to do.
So I guess that's like a dopamine release button for people, like giving a like on a Facebook post, or a heart on a Twitter post, or a like on a YouTube video. Please like this video, everyone. My personal mental stability depends on it. So I think there's probably a tendency to go from, man, I don't know why my character, it seems like I got targeted and my character went down. Whatever, but then you sit down on Reddit and you want that dopamine rush, especially if you're, if you had a bad game and your favorite character bit the dust or whatever. So then you can take it from, I was knocked down to minus 33 hits. No, even in 5th edition, there's no death saves for that. I was just toast, right? Then you can really, you can take it from, I was targeted for being, too tall. I was taller than everyone else, and I could tell that the dungeon master had it in for me. Dear Reddit, you'll never believe this, but, and then they stretch out, my character died. I think the DM maybe was kind of a jerk, to, a 3-parter, and everybody love bombs you with all these upvotes and the medals, like you say, and everything like that. So I think perhaps there's a tendency by people, when they get that Reddit spot. Now, I'm not saying everybody lies. I'm not saying that, that people just go on the internet and lie. But I think there's a tendency, perhaps, because some of them, I've heard the stories and I'm like, yep, I've directly seen stuff like that before. I can definitely believe you. But when other people get to the point where the only thing missing from the post is, and then everyone clapped, well,
that's LinkedIn. that's Twitter. If the person's feeling righteous, they've righteously brought down some injustice, that's Twitter. And if the person is humbled but proud, and it's so grateful, and really, it's due to the team. That's LinkedIn.
That's LinkedIn. Yeah. You gotta do your LinkedIn for your professional stuff, but yeah, I think by and large that it's just a mess. It's just a case of everybody, takes. Now, I have an exceptionally silly horror story that I'm still friends with everyone that it happened with, and I've told it on the show before about my friend Rob getting shot through the head with an arrow in game, and why that happened and how that happened, and it was part of like a 5-year revenge scheme started by a dungeon master to avenge a character. But I've told the story before, and it's funny. It's a funny, like, Rob's not mad about it anymore. I'm not mad about it. Kevin's not mad about it. And when we bring it up, we all laugh about it, but the teary, angsty, I was literally shaking. I just, like you say, the bad people will just tend to drift away.
Yeah,
will just tend to go away because they'll realize that they're not wanted at the table, whether they're the game master or a problem player.
Yeah. So Kanek mentions Fabio. So I have to be that annoying player that you want to leave the game because I'm going to tell you about my character. I had this character once. I rolled up a fighter and rolled up. I rolled him up and he had like 18 charisma, and it was only 12 strength or something like that. And the DM said, "Oh, you can swap him around if you want, so he has top strength." And I said, "No, he'll have 18 charisma. He can be an effective fighter with 18 charisma. I'm going to call him Fabio, the most beautiful fighter in the cosmos." And so he hired 5 men-at-arms. He would always have 5 men-at-arms. 4 men-at-arms. It's Fabio and his fingers, and together we fist you. So fisting me like the actual punch. There was also a reference to there was a guy on RPG.net, and he was actually Italian. So English was not his first language. And then he mentioned that at one point he had got angry with his DM. He said, "And then I fist him." And, and we knew what he meant, but that could be an expression of anger too, I guess, but I hope not. Anyway, so Fabio was a bit stupid and only moderately strong, but he was very beautiful and charismatic. So, and his so his men-at-arms followed him everywhere quite happily. I think he had a henchman or two as well. I can't remember. And he had many an adventure. Worked his way up to I think 7th level, and then a Medusa turned him to stone.
What a beautiful statue!
And nobody was, and we didn't have any stone to flesh spells or anything like that. So I was always drinking potions that were going, "I can't believe it's not butter." Anyway, so he was turned to stone, and the other players were saying, "No, we can't just leave him here." And the DM's like, "Well, he's stoned now, so he's 400 pounds. Well, we can't just leave him here. We have to go back. We have to go back and like find a magic scroll or something, pay a cleric to come and turn him back to flesh and that." I said, no, leave him. I think it is quite appropriate that the most beautiful fighter in the cosmos spend eternity as a beautiful statue.
Oh, well, there you go. I might have to have a beautiful Fabio statue in my Castle Greyhawk dungeon just as a tribute to him.
And if anyone goes stone to flesh, then he turns into a 7th level fighter and expects everyone to worship him because he's so beautiful.
There you go. I could do that.
It was always going up to the female NPCs, and he didn't like even crack onto them. He didn't say anything to them. He just say, "Hello, my dear," and he'd expect them to approach him because he's so beautiful. You see. But we didn't go into that. It was assumed that some things happen sometimes, but we didn't discuss it. It didn't need to be. That's not what the campaign was about. We weren't playing, what was it, Blue Rose or something, that stupid world.
Yeah.
We were just playing D&D and just happened to have this Dane stupid character.
Yeah. No, Connect, that's not the Stonehead. So my Monday night game is it's not live streamed. I used to tell like summaries of the Monday night game, but I don't know. I don't think you guys like audience wise really cared for it. But the Monday night game is actually it's set in Castle Greyhawk, and I use drips and drabs from Gary's Castle Greyhawk because there's like been a few maps leaked of his layout. You know, people have like surreptitiously taken pictures and so on of his notebook, but Gary never published his actual Castle Greyhawk dungeon. So I just take the stories I heard about it and I put them in my own maps. And Monday night, the group had encountered the Great Stone Enigma of Greyhawk. And if you know it, audience, if you know what that is, you know what that is. But Connect is in the Monday game, and she was saying, I guess she wanted the Stonehead to be Fabio. The Stonehead is not Fabio. The Stonehead, I already know what the Stonehead is, and it's not Fabio. You guys may encounter Fabio down there someday, but that's not the giant stone enigma of Greyhawk. Trust me. You mean I don't count WG7? Get out! I'll wait for you to leave. No, Kabuki, I'm just kidding. No. WG7 was like this big middle finger to Gary. It was ridiculous comedy levels, disparate ridiculous comedy levels, all just stacked one on top of another. None of those people had access to any of Gary's stuff. You had like a Star Trek level, a McDonald's level. You know, it was all Funhouse Dungeon, but not good Funhouse Dungeon like White Plume Mountain is Funhouse Dungeon. It was just, you know, I don't know. It was not something I was particularly fun at. Connect says, let's get the Gygaxes to get Greyhawk unpublished. WG7, you mean? You can ask that. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. That's, you know, Gale Gygax has.
Wizards of the Coast probably stole it and they've got it in a secret vault underneath their building quarters.
No.
Behind
Gary?
all the lasers. We need to send Catherine Zeta-Jones in to crawl through the lasers and get it. I
don't know. I'd send Catherine Zeta-Jones anyway. I should stop there. But no. Wizards has the rights to anything with the name Greyhawk on it. So, you know, Mordenkainen, Robilar, Tensor, Big B, all that jazzmatazz, all belongs to Wizards of the Coast. So you can't write Mordenkainen's Fantastic Adventure 2 and publish it. They will sue you. But with that said, Gary's Greyhawk notes, like if you know, instead of Mordenkainen, the adventuring mage, it would be, you know, if you just said it's Jim the mage, you know, you just literally filed off all of the Greyhawk names, but left everything else in place. You still couldn't publish it because all of that belongs to Gail Gygax, and Gail and Gary's children, with the exception of Alex Gygax, are not on speaking terms. So, little inside baseball there. So, unfortunately, Vaughn says, "I'm sorry that content in a role-playing game is offensive. What are they trying to promote? Insults the community." I couldn't tell you, Vaughn. Your guess is as good as mine. Your clue is as good as mine. So I'm sorry too, bud. Jimmy the Wizard, yeah. Let me see. But anyway, Kabuki, I hope you didn't leave. I hope Kabuki wasn't like, fine, log off. Oh no, there you are. Yeah, no, WG7. Now, someone told me, and I've never seen it, that the Ruins of Castle Greyhawk, which was a later TSR publishing, was actually a serious take. And it was kind of a best guess attempt by TSR after Gary left. This is a little bit of information, and I have linked to this before. I've actually put it on the show. You guys can check this out yourself. There was always this supposition that Wizards wanted nothing to do, or TSR after Gary left wanted nothing to do with Castle Greyhawk. And that, like, Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, Maztica, Birthright, Mystara, Al-Qadim, Karatur. Am I missing any, Kyle?
I have no idea.
Spelljammer, that they all just, like, Greyhawk is old and busted and nobody cares about it. And all these other sets surpassed it. The fact was, Greyhawk product sales were only a few thousand below Forgotten Realms product sales. It was literally neck and neck between those two as to what was the hottest property the TSR made. And they never went down like that. Like, that never dropped off the radar. So after, I guess, they got their bitchiness out of their systems with stuff like puppets and gargoyles and Castle Greyhawk, TSR got serious about publishing some good Greyhawk material, to the point that they had Jim Ward and Rob Kuntz writing it, with Greyhawk Adventures and other stuff. So Greyhawk was always a fairly well considered thing by TSR. Again, once they got it out of their system.
Well, I mean, when you run a company, sometimes you just got to try a bunch of random stuff and see what sells.
Yeah, and I that. And you and I have talked about this before, and I know I mentioned it to the audience before. This is one thing, like, I can't believe I would ever say I'm really on Wizards of the Coast side here, but I'll say it again. Ryan Dancy used to post to Usenet. For you youngsters who don't know what that is, it was like a text bulletin board. It was the internet from like 1985 to 1994. The internet was FTP, email, and Usenet. That was it. There was no web, anything like that. And Kyle asserts that it was probably better off that way too.
Well, I don't know about better off, but I think the actual functionality, the truly useful stuff, was pretty much established by about that date, or maybe a couple of years later, with some basic web pages and that. The actual functionality, and the rest since then has been mostly entertainment.
Yeah. So
entertaining fan pages of game stuff and YouTube and Netflix and Spotify, and before that there was Napster and all the rest. Just entertainment. And that's great and all, but in terms of the actual functionality, being able to communicate with people, do purchases online, transfer money online, access information, and that could be accomplished with your green writing on the black background.
Yeah.
Text only, some pretty basic stuff, and with about 28K board connection.
Well, right. So when TSR was bought by Wizards of the Coast, Ryan Dancy actually used to post on the Rec Games FRP, RPG, D&D Usenet group. And I remember him talking about what a state TSR's warehouses were in, that they found stuff that had dated back to early second edition, like pallets, boxes, crates of it, that was sitting there. And it hadn't been returned. It had been printed, and then it sat there waiting, like perfectly packaged up, waiting to go, just waiting for an order of it. Like anybody was ever going to buy this, like any store was ever going to say, we need 500 copies of Maztica, something like that. And so the discussion turned, well, what'd you do with all this stuff? And he said, well, we wrote it off. We pulped it. And the wailing and gnashing of teeth, the rending of clothes, and the throwing of ashes on heads that went on, and people getting angry saying, well, you should have sold it to us. You could have sold it to us for like a deep discount instead of destroying it. And the sensible responses were, you had decades to buy this.
What are we going to keep holding it onto it for 50 years in a warehouse somewhere?
You had
put it next to the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
In a warehouse.
To buy this stuff. And now that we bought the company and we're trying to save Dungeons and Dragons, you want us to essentially take a loss to give you something that at any point you could have supported, Walden Books, your favorite local bookstore, or mail order directly from TSR and help them out. And you're crying because we won't just give it to you. No, you had long enough to get this. So in that respect, I'm actually kind of with him.
Even if Watsy had given it to them, they'd still complain. As was said on RPGNet in the early 2000s, complaining about free stuff is pretty much the essence of what it means to be on the internet. Yeah, complaining about that is pretty much right on the spot. You give somebody, hey, here's a free video game. A free video game you can play. Well, it needs to be better, and you need to give me more. What? Why? I'm just kind of looking through people talking about hacking old computers and so forth and et cetera. Muds and so on. I posted this up on Twitter the other day. I mentioned this earlier tonight, actually. I'm a big fan of Wizardry, Surtex Wizardry games. And it was Wizardry, The Bard's Tale, and then the first gold box SSI game. Loved those. Did you do any CRPGs when you were a kid, Kyle? What, you mean like Muds and things?
Yeah, and Muds, standalone games, anything like that?
No, I didn't. I didn't own a computer until my 30s. I had access to other people's ones sometimes. Like we had console games, but there was things like what was it called, Team Yankee, playing 10 games, and there was a basketball one where you could customize your team and rename them and stuff, rename the individuals. We renamed them after all these female actresses. So like Lauren Bacall was doing slam dunks and stuff. The first I became aware of the internet was I had a geek friend whose dad was a maths professor at the university, and after work we'd go into his office, and it was using must have been MIRC, and there was a Star Wars chat thing, and nothing much happened, but that's what we did.
Right on. So great names for computer characters. We go back to this because it's true. The Japanese baseball game, Japanese coder. Somebody told me what game this was one night when I put this up here. This apparently being what a Japanese video game programming team thinks thinks American names are. So you had stuff like Sleeve McDickle, Mario Mercurlane, Raoul Chamberlain, Tony Smerick, and of course, who can forget the all-star Bobson Dognut and others. Just one of my favorites. But anyway, yeah, Bard's Tale. You encounter 99 barbarians, and 99 barbarians. Bard's Tale, I think, is one you would have loved, Kyle. There's no negotiation.
Yeah, so I looked after somebody's Apple Mac one time. Like he and his wife went. Must have been when I was, God knows how old I was, late teens or something. He and his wife went overseas for a few months, and I didn't house sit, but I did check on the house, and he took the valuables out of his house, including his Apple Mac thingo. And yeah, there was Bard's Tale on it, but it had puzzles, so I got stuck and stopped playing.
Oh, okay. Maybe you wouldn't have liked Bard's Tale. Yeah, no. Bard's
Tale was like side-scrolling. You know, you'd move along, and then you'd encounter something, and you'd have a multiple choice answer to have a conversation with them. I don't know. And it was black and white, basically. Was that it? I don't know.
No. Bard's Tale was first person. You'd build basically a D&D party. The classes were different. Obviously, they came up with their own RP system, but you'd have warriors and clerics and rogues and magic users and all that jazzmatazz. And you kind of moved through a one step at a time 3D world. There was a Bard's Tale 2 actually had an outdoor map. You could move around on the outdoor map and go find different cities and different dungeons to explore. There was
the Bard's Tale where we got to be eaten by a grue.
No, that was Zork. That was
Zork. I do have many memories of being eaten by a grue.
Yeah. I have played the SSI games. Well, to be fair, I've played Pool of Radiance a few times, and I started playing, I think it's Curse of the Azure Bonds right after it. But I have not gone back to continue playing Curse of the Azure Bonds. But there were just some great classic computer role-playing games out there. Love them all. I love many of them. Let me say that. I don't necessarily love them all. I think one of the biggest heartbreaks was one of the first CRPGs I ever really got into on my Commodore 64 was Fantasy, Phantasie. You know, you got to keep it copyrightable. Yeah. On my Commodore 64, and it was pirated, and my third disc went bad. And I could never find a BBS that had the third disc worth of data for me to download, and I could play to a certain point, and then it would be like insert disc 3. I turn the Commodore off and turn it back on, play something else for a little while. Heartbreaking.
Well, I had a friend who had, I think it was an Atari, but you could plug a tape player into it, and you'd have the computer program on the tape, and you just press play and you go away for 15 minutes while it played it into the memory.
Yeah.
And get a snack and come back with your biscuits and juice or whatever, and then start playing the Curse of Monkey Island or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, I did. My first computer was a VIC-20 that when you turned it on, gave you a whopping 1.9 kilobytes of usable RAM. So I typed in a lot of programs out of magazines and saved them to tape and got games on cartridge. But then I got my Commodore 64. 39 kilobytes of RAM in my C64. I did not need anything else. Thank you. That was plenty enough. And but I still had my tape drive. I brought that because it was the same basic computer, just a slightly more advanced guts. So I kept the tape.
Says it always took 1 hour on tape. No, what really took a long time was if you got the computer magazines with the programs written in them and you typed them in.
Yeah. Many weekends lost. I was looking at something. It just, I fell down a rabbit hole because I could remember, like, and it was a fantasy kind of action game. And I was thinking, like, oh, what was that thing called? And I couldn't. I think it had the incredibly creative title of Wizard's Quest, and it was published in Compute magazine. But it was it required more memory. Like you had to have an add-on module for the VIC to have the memory to type it in. So I was heartbroken that I was like, well, what if I just type part of it in? Will it work? No. No, it will not. It does not count. But yeah, once I had the Commodore, so many weekends lost to type those programs in. And there was one, it was a fantasy text adventure. And it was written by Orson Scott Card, the guy that actually wrote the Ender's Game series. He wrote games for the Commodore 64. And I was so excited. And I got this and I sat down and I carefully typed it in and I ran it. It's like syntax error on line such and such. I was like, okay, so I read the magazine. I'll go and I look at the line and I'm like, that's exactly it, though. That's exactly it. So I said, well, what if I change this? And it didn't crash. I was like, oh, yay, it didn't crash. That's awesome. And then I got to a certain point in the game where the Commodore locked up. And I shut it off and I turned it back on and I loaded it off disk. I had a floppy disk drive at that point. And I hammered I loaded it and I started playing and it got to that point again and it locked up. And I could never figure out. Fast forward to a couple of years ago, like I just forgot about it. Yeah, it turns out old Scotty Boy had a typo. And it got resolved in like the next issue of the magazine. People are like, if you typed in Emerald Elephant, here's the bug fix, Thanks.
So even basic computer programs were not play tested.
Yeah.
Just like role-playing games did today.
Exactly. Not play tested.
Conflict has been play tested. Most importantly, it's been play tested by people without me involved.
Yes.
Flying Mice Games says that's the most important part of playtest, where the game author is not a player or DM. They just send it out into the wild and get the feedback on it. It says because your game writing has to make sense to somebody without your explaining it, without your being there explaining it.
Yeah, I always I always try. I want people's feedback from my modules, and like the WGH series 2 through 5, I ran as a DM, but they were very patchy because I ran them at a convention. It's like, hey, Bill, you ought to come and run a D&D game. Sure. That what people download when they get the WGH modules is not what I ran. It is what I ran at the con, but the nice maps and, like, here is a dimly lit room. Dirty gnolls sit around a table gnawing on bones. The leader looks at you when you enter and stands up and draws a sword and points it at you and says, "What do you want?" Notes for the dungeon master. These, no, my notes were like, room 10, gnolls 8. That was the module that I wrote for the convention. So it's nice to get feedback. It's nice to send it out into the wild and see people play it and give me feedback on it. So,
well, we'll see what happens when we start pushing our adventures out, eh?
Yes, that's right. Because if you support the channel at the $10 level, whether it's through a YouTube membership or you support us on Patreon, and the link, the crab's pointing to the link right there, you get every month starting in August, starting at the end of this month, you will receive a mini Advanced Dungeons and Dragons module. I don't mean it's physically small, but it is a brief Dungeons and Dragons Advanced First Edition Dungeons and Dragons adventure. You can fold it into your campaign. You can use it as a one-shot at your FLGS, save it for a convention. Whatever floats your boat, you will have that. And again, that is at the $10 membership level, whether it's through YouTube memberships or through Patreon. And I'm thinking about working on something for the folks who are at the lower tier, but I don't want to, mum's the word. I'll get back to you folks. But yeah, so Kyle,
Bill's got one. I don't know what's in it, but I've got one. It's just like a dozen pages and with a traditional dungeon map and illustrations.
Wait, it's a dozen pages or a dozen encounters?
A dozen pages. How many encounters? Okay. Well, that depends how the players put it through. I mean, they could just go in and have one encounter and all die, or go in and have one encounter and grab a bunch of treasure and go away and never go back. Or they could be the completist type who have to hunt down every monster in the dungeon and kill it and find every last scrap of coin. That's up to the players.
Well, right on. So there you go, Kyle. There you go, guys. Kyle has got something pretty chunky. I mean, a dozen pages. That's up there.
Yeah, it's letter size, US letter size.
Right.
Bill said he was going to take it on and give it the traditional formatting, which I don't.
Yes, I will. I will get you that template, Kyle. You have asked for that. I will create that template and I think you should. I think templates should be translatable. You've got Open Office. I've got Word. So we'll get that to you. But yeah, these come to you in the classic. What you would have picked up between like 1980 and say 1985. 2 columns. Very little margin around, notes for the DM, or introduction, notes for the DM, and start. And then you get into the meat of the module and a nice map.
And I put in a bit of, if the players do this, then the monsters might do that kind of thing.
Little bit of tactical info.
Yeah. Alan asks if the modules will have Greyhawk setting locations. Mine don't. Mine can just be plugged in anywhere that's kind of generic fantasy. But I can't speak for Bill.
Now, I know that a lot of people out there, like, for example, Trace Richards, we haven't seen you in a while, Trace. Hello. Hope you're well. He does more of a, Ravenloft thing. So I will probably keep these generic. Now, if there's a big hue and cry for Greyhawk, I can probably be convinced to Greyhawkify the ones, at least the ones from me. So, I'll go with the flow. Just like my module, I asked, hey, where do people like as far as levels? And it's lower level stuff. So lower level stuff. The first module So it won't just be, you know,
I put in whatever I rolled up, and
yeah. So
brutal.
Yeah, you got to deal with Brutal Kyle's module. So he had his Viking hat on the entire time, I'm told.
But as I said, I mean, it's a dungeon, so I think there's a sort of a mentality that you've got to adopt. The whole traditional Advanced Dungeons and Dragons thing, the end of the player's handbook, avoid unnecessary encounters.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what you're actually here for, and 9 times out of 10, what the players are there for, all their characters, is for the treasure. So if you can grab the treasure without fighting any monsters, awesome, because the monsters are going to be this much experience points, and then the treasure's going to be that much.
Yes.
9 times out of 10. And it's also no use leveling up if you can't actually pay for the training.
Just so.
There. So it's the way I DM things is it's usually up to the players. Occasionally they get ambushed and surprised, but generally speaking, if there are big badass monsters around, there's going to be some sign of them. If there's a dragon flying around, there's going to be missing cattle. There's going to be dragon manure around. There's going to be stories floating around amongst the local villagers. You don't just find that black dragon in a 10 by 10 room and go, oh, there'll be some sort of sign. And if players choose to keep, the desolation of Smorg, that is even marked on the map, everywhere around Smorg's mountain is desolated by him because he's just burnt it all. And so if the players see all that and choose to keep going, they know what they're getting. So
there you go.
Treat it.
Anyway, so Road March was asking me, do my modules work with 5e? Well, now let me tell you what, they're statted for first edition AD&D, but there is no reason. Now, I have said this before, that if you're just talking about the Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition, it's a fine, lightweight role-playing game. So don't be afraid to take this, flip the armor classes, and bump up the hit points for your monsters. Hey, guess what? I just told you how to translate them into 5th edition. But I write them for AD&D, just a couple, 2 or 3 changes, and I promise they will work. If you're in the mood for a classic style of it, because that's what I am, right? I go from the classic. But see, me, if you take my adventure modules and you play them in 5th edition, I'm going to hunt you down. I'm going to find out where you live. Kyle's an operator. He can do it.
I'm going to take all your Cheetos.
You monster.
Eat all your pizza.
You monster. Are you going to leave Korean snacks in place for them, or are you not?
Over a long career gaming, I've developed a particular set of skills. So don't do 5th edition.
All right. Well, there is the warning from Kyle regarding his modules. I'm a little bit more hippie. I'm a little bit more granola. But anyway, let's see. I don't want to have missed any of these. Oh, thank you, Road March. Well, if you want to get some stuff from me, like I said, if you're not already, I don't want to be bang on the drum, but you can become a subscriber on YouTube at the. I don't remember the ranks. I'm so sorry. I don't want to say the wrong rank, and you'd be like, "Oh, I'm subscribed. Where's my free stuff, man?" I'm like, I need you to move it up. But at the $10 level on YouTube or on Patreon, you get the free month.
Veteran Prefect and Master Thief.
Master Thief, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, just Road March. Just don't convert any of Kyle. Just convert all my modules you want. Don't convert any of Kyle's, or you will wake up pizzaless and Cheeto-less, and I can't be responsible for any heartbreak that might come because of that. So, but Kyle, will you commit a war crime and leave Korean snacks in their place?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Oh no, that's terrible. That's terrible.
He's referring to one time when we were gaming. The game store was a couple of levels above. It was in the middle of the city, and it was a couple of levels above. There was a Korean grocery store down below, and one of the players just grabbed random stuff from the Korean grocery. There were no Korean players in the group, but he just grabbed random stuff. He's like, "Yeah, look, let's try things. Let's be open to things and try them." And he brought these Korean snacks that were like, they looked like a little cheesy snack or whatever, but it was a small cylindrical thing, and it was kind of dark brown colored. I couldn't bring myself to put a small dark brown colored cylindrical crunchy thing in my mouth. So I have no idea what it tasted like, but yeah, I didn't hear any rave reviews about it from later on. So yeah, it was disturbing to see. It could have tasted great, I don't know, but it was disturbing to see. Food should look like food, or at least look like junk food, not like something strange.
Sir Nuno says, seaweed, here we come. See, I've had seaweed before, and it's like a paper thin. I mean paper. I don't mean, by paper thin, I mean it's like 3 millimeters, but it's kind of crispy. I mean as thin as a piece of paper. Kind of bland potato chip with a lot of salt on it. Like I wouldn't, like, I didn't spit it out. I didn't feel ill or anything, but I was just like, yeah, no, I wouldn't have this again. Now the girl I was dating at the time also offered me wasabi peanuts, which were delicious. And as the name implies, very hot, very spicy. Let's see. Vaughn Gifford asks you, if we're converting to 5e, can we get lots of energy draining undead?
Okay. Is that what happens in 5th edition? You drain the energy from undead and you gain a level or something? I don't know.
I have no idea. No idea. Alan asks, are either of we thinking of keeping the encounters and maps like it? Yes, that is the thrust. That is how we're doing it. I have seen the text, but not the map. So I don't know if Kyle did it in the non-repro blue style, but if I can find a good online map builder, I will.
Yeah, remember, there's, I'll post it through your little account. Dungeonscrawl.com.
Dungeon Scrawled, that's it. Thank you. Dungeonscrawl.com.
You can choose to make it do the blue thing if you want.
Yeah. The non-reproduction blue. So yeah, we'll I'll make it look cool. Now I'm no artist. Okay, I mean I do stick figures. Okay, and if you go and you look at my old free modules, the WGH series, and you're like, no, Bill, the cover art's actually pretty good. Understand, for 3 of those 5 modules, I actually begged free art from really gifted artists. So no, I'm not good at art. So unfortunately, these the art will be in the writing. Although Kyle has included some fun images in his, which I think you guys will like. No spoilers.
Yeah, well, I just stole images from the internet and then I altered them through like cartoonized websites and things like that. So I altered them so that they're essentially new works, and that and some public domain images, like the cover image is just a side mount. It's a public domain image.
Yeah, I mean, my early art was photographs of miniatures and screen grabs from fantasy role-playing games. that I just put through Microsoft Photo Editor and made them look like the color images. If I needed a color image, I used like the watercolor filter, and stuff on the inside I used the posterize to make it look like pencil art. So that's how I got art back then. But if I get, who knows, maybe someday if I become a force majeure of publication, I'll hire an in-house artist. Props on your haircut from Connect.
I don't know. She's talking to Kylie, so I don't know who she's talking to.
Man, is Kylie Minogue in the chat?
I actually dated a girl called Kylie once, but it got too much. It was like, oh Kyle, oh Kylie, oh Kyle, oh Kylie. It was too weird, so we stopped.
Oh,
yeah. So I'm going to go in a minute because I'm hungry. I haven't had lunch.
Well, we're talking about all these snacks, so I don't blame you. I'm going to get some dinner.
Uncle Brett put his hand up to play Conflict. Any other hands up to play that? To just think, it can be any style of game. It could be sort of like a national police hostage rescue team, or you could be Sicario types. Could even be criminals if you want, or terrorists. I don't care. The game allows for that.
Yeah, if it's going to be Sicario, I absolutely call Steve Forsing. Mexican cop shot me in the plate.
No, Sononis, I didn't dump her. I have not ended many relationships, but many relationships have been ended with me. So that's just been my life.
All right. So, if you guys, how to get in contact with us, if you want to do a little bit of conflict, Kyle, I'm going to let you dictate how many players you do or do not want. So reach out to the show.
I think 4 players is the minimum. Otherwise, everyone's handling a bunch of men-at-arms, so to speak.
Okay. Well, I was thinking more on the other side on the maximum, but again, that's up to you. I know that with the level of StreamYard that I pay for, I think I can have myself and 10 people. So that's me and Kyle, and the rest of you can, I'm sure, do the math to figure that out. So,
Road March asks, what do you think about one-trick pony players? I only play fighter barbarian PCs. Why would you need multiple tricks?
I'm, the human fighter with sword. Monday night's game, we actually, Sky Hernstrom, who I interviewed, fantasy pulp author Sky Hernstrom, joined our Monday night game, and he's just like, yeah, I'm a human fighter. Like, he's 7th level and he is ring mail. I insisted he take a +2 sword, but other than that, he's like, yeah, I'm just a human fighter.
Well, because that's why you're in a game group. You have one trick, and then the other character has another trick, and so on. So, you work as a team. Fighter, magic user, cleric, thief.
Which actually can be 2 players. Fighter magic user is a multi-class, and cleric thief is a multi-class available for half orcs.
Yeah,
so
then in a modern warfare game, you've got the machine gunner instead of the fighter. Instead of the magic user, you've got the commander who calls in artillery. Instead of the cleric, you've got the medic, and instead of the thief, you've got the scout.
Yeah, the combat engineer.
Same thing. It's all the same.
But anyway, hey, let's let Kyle get some food here before he breaks into your houses and steals your snacks. I want to thank you very much, Kyle, for being here. I'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow night, we're going to roll up a Cyberpunk 2020 character. We're going to have fun, and we're going to create a Cyberpunk 2020 character. Friday, we are going to be back. We're going to be playing some Gamma World on Friday. We left on a cliffhanger last week. Don't miss Gamma World this week. And I will have some announcements about Gamma World coming up soon, too. But you'll hear it when you hear it. So thank you very much again, Kyle, for joining us this evening. And thank you, everyone, for being here out in the audience. You're all wonderful people. I don't care what they say about you on Reddit. But anyhow, until then, keep rolling the dice, and we'll see you around, Kyle. Take care of yourself, sir. And as for the rest of you guys, it's Pet Watch, so just keep your eyes open and let me know if you've seen my owl bear.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around. Some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle way off course? Naked as a toad all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing dicks, just take me to the show.